Okay, so today's daf yomi is Bava Basra daf Beis, and we're going to start on the bottom of Yud Aleph from Beis. Daf is dedicated for Shemir for the Chayalim, and Sol for the Shvuyim, Yeshua for Am Yisrael. Gemara says on the bottom of Yud Aleph from Beis, Amar Mar, we had a statement, Ayasatum Ubikesh Potcha. Let's say there was a part that opened up into an alleyway, and you closed it off, but now you want to reopen it. Aim b'name of the people in the alleyway, where you want to provide an opening into that alleyway, which has all sorts of other laws, ancillary laws associated with it. They can't stop you. Aim b'name of because you said, look, it was part of your building. You had an original opening there. However, Amar Rava says, it's only the case where you didn't take down your door frame. But once you took down the door frame, parts is Petzimav, then then they can stop you from doing this. Amarle Abayla Rava, Tayin the Messiah, so Bai says to Rava, Bryce that supports you. Bai is Sasum, let's say you have a closed off alleyway, closed off entrance to an alleyway, Yeshoy Dawad Amos. Then you're, even though it's closed, since you closed it off, but you didn't officially close it, you could still have the 4 cubits that every entranceway is entitled to. But parts as Petzima, once you took down the frame, then you've given up hope of getting it, and Ein Lo Dalad Amos, then you don't have 4 Amos associated with it. So now we're on the top of 12a, So 5 lines from the top. So now the Gemara says the following. Gemara says, now let's say you have a closed off wall that it used to be an opening. We still consider it an opening. So if it would be a grave, then everything around the grave would be considered tamei. But if there's an opening to the grave, then only the entrance to the opening is tamei. So now we say, since it's really not officially closed, it's just boarded up, so to speak, then it's not viewed as a grave, and it's not matame everything around it. But parts as petzima, but once you remove the frame, then matame kol sviva. Then it makes everything around it tamei. Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mavos and Befalashos Lier Acheres. Let's say you have like a road that's an intercity highway, Bikshu Bnei Ayir Ososman, and the people in one city want to close it down. Bnei Oso Ayir Ma'afinoah. Then the other people can stop you from closing down the road. And okay, so what's the chiddush? Of course, it's a public space. Well, only by and not only if there isn't another highway to go on, the ma'akli that they're allowed to stop you, meaning say, look, we have no other road. Even if there's another road that they could take, they could still stop the people from closing it down. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda told him the name of Rav Damar Meitzer Shechsikabo Rab and Masra Kalkol. Once the community has decided to use this space, you're now allowed to get rid of it. And so therefore one city can't stop the other city from using it. Amar Rav Hanan, Amar Shmuel, Mavos, and Mefulash, and Marshus Harabim. Once you have roads that go back and forth between the public domain, Ubikshu B'nei Mavos, La'amilu Andalasos, and the people. So you have an inner city road, or you actually not inner city. You have a alleyway that goes into the public domain, and the people in the alleyway want to put up a door to stop the people from the public coming in. Bikshu La'amilu Andalasos. The people from the public can say, no, we're allowed to stop you from putting up a door there. So we had the statement. So the people in the yeshiva thought, this refers to the 4 cubits, like Rabbi Zera, Amar Rav Nachman, this refers to Zera Rav Nachman, you say at first they thought that this refers to the 4 cubits that were coming off the alleyway, that the public domain has an access to an additional 4 amos. But Veloli, it's not the case. That's only with respect to Tuma, mean to say that the public domain, and we say that if there's a doubtful case of Tuma, ambiguous Tuma in the public domain, we're going to say it's ritually pure. But here, here we need to say that even in a circumstance where we have to be concerned that maybe the traffic will be congested and they'll need to go into that space, so you can't close it off to prevent them from using it on a urgent basis. Now, in the next point stated, we're talking about the minimum amount in order to allow people to divide up a property. to force the other partner to split up the property. It says, now I want to divide up the field until there's 9 kabin for each one. I mean, say once the field produces amount per year of 9 kabin, then the other party can force the other party to divide it. There's another source, another opinion of the Mishnah says 9 half kabin. So the Gemara says, V'lo pligi, they're not actually arguing. Mark Yasri, Mark Yasri. It depends upon the place where you are. In Bavel, Mai, what's the case in Bavel? So in Bavel, Amr Rav Yosef, Bei Radu Yoma. In Bavel, they say it's the amount it takes to work a field for one day. What does it mean, my Yama? What does it mean? So basically, if there's an amount of area that you can work in one day, then each party could force the other partner to divide it up. What does it mean, the amount to work in one day? Iyoma Zara, if it's amount to sow a field, well then Trey Yoma Karba, then it will take 2 days to plow that. But Lohavi wouldn't take a full 2 days, so it would be a fraction, so it wouldn't work out. Any Yom Karba, and if it would take 1 day to plow the field, then Yom Dazar Lohavi won't even have a day of sowing. So how do you divide this up? So the Gemara says, Yom Karba the Karvatani. Maybe it's the day of plowing, but you have to do it twice. They used to plow the field twice, so make an even number. Or Yom Dazara, or the day of sowing, and it would take the same amount as plowing. Why? Because Bahadure, because it's a hilly field, and so therefore it takes longer to sow it. Well, what's the amount that they can force you to divide up a source of water? The amount of water that it would take to water a field in one day. Pardisa, what about an orchard? An orchard that produces 3 kabin. Indeed, we have a price that says, if let's say he says, I'm going to sell you a portion of a vineyard, Sumchus Omer will Yifchos min Gimel kabin. It can't be less than 3 kabin. That's what Sumchus says. Rabbi Yossi, Ein Elu El Divrei Nevius. Rabbi Yossi says, where are you getting the source from? What's your basis for 3 kabin for a vineyard? You can force somebody to divide it. These are words of a prophecy, meaning to say that you have no basis for it. You're like a prophet just speaking. So the Babylon, what will be the one Babylon? Amarava Bar Kanasa, Tuas Atziyasa Bnei Bane Trasar Gufani. It's 3 kabin, which is the amount of basically Tuas Atziyasa, 3 Atziyasa, which is Bane Trasar Gufani, which are Bane Trasar Gufani, which Rashi says is all 12 grapevines is called an otzi, and so therefore it's 3. It's an atziyasa, which is 12 grapevines, 3 rows of 4. So the Gemara says, like the amount that a person could hoe in one day. That's the amount. Amar Rabbi Avdimi Dimen Haifa. So now we have a very powerful homily that he says, Miyom Shachar Beis Hamikdash, the day the temple was destroyed, Nitno Nevuim and Anavim, Benitno Chacham, prophecy was taken away. The prophet, the ability to prophesy was taken away from the prophets and given to the scholars. Gemara says, 1 second. Atu Chacham Lav Navi. What are you talking about? A Chacham could also be a Navi. A scholar can also be a prophet. So Gemara says, well, this is what it means. Even though it was taken from the prophets, it wasn't taken from the scholars, and so the scholars continued to prophesize. And Amemar proves this. I'll prove it to you that a Chacham is greater than a prophet. How can I prove that to you? As it states, that a prophet has like a levav, like the hearts of a scholar. Who is dependent upon whom? The small one is dependent upon the greater one. That's why it says the prophet can have the heart of wisdom. Wisdom is greater than prophecy. Amar Abai, and Abai proves this. He says, Teida, I'll prove it to you. Amar Gava Rabba Mosa. I'll prove to you that a scholar is a prophet, because sometimes a great man will say something, and it'll be said in the name of somebody else. Kavasi, exactly like him. How else would they get that unless they're both arriving at the same idea through prophecy? Amar Rabba says, that's not a proof. My kushia, what are you talking about? Maybe they just both had the same idea, the same insight. Ela Marava Teda, I'll prove to you that there's prophets. Amar Grav Rabba Milsa, Misamar Mishmei Rabbi Akiva, that sometimes a person will say something great, and we see was said also in the name of Rabbi Akiva, and you can't say that they're the same Mazel as Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva is clearly smarter than this other person. Rabbi Akiva Bar Yosef Kavase, so Amar Rav Ashi, my question, that's also not a proof. We're on top of 12b. Dilma, well, Hamilsa Bar Mazalium, maybe for this exact matter, they have the same idea, even though Rabbi Akiva is the greatest. Maybe you can achieve the same insight as Rabbi Akiva on one specific point. Rav Ashi says, I'll prove it to you. Teita de Amar Gava Rabba Milsa. Sometimes they'll say something great. Mis Amrei Halacham Moshe Misinai Kavasi. And then they'll say, actually, it's a law like Moses at Sinai from him. So you see someone will say the same thing as Moses said at Sinai, and that's a proof that he's that wisdom is a type of prophecy. And this is not a proof. Doma Kasuma Baruba. Maybe when we say an idea, we're like a blind man trying to get through a skylight. Sometimes you get through. So Gemara says, no, that can't be the case. We'll have Tamya. Have you? It's not just dumb luck. You basically sometimes give a reason, and it's the same reason as the law from Moses at Sinai. It's the same reason as the Torah. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Now we have another idea. Yom Shachar Beis Hamikdash. This source says from the day the temple was destroyed, Nitla Nevuah Min Neviim. The prophecy was taken away from the prophets. But Nitna was Shotim Utinokos. It was given to Shotim, are like insane, or basically not of sound mind, and to the young children. So what is the deeper meaning of this idea? It's the idea that sometimes the great insight are often come from the people who are the least quote unquote normal in society. That often they're the ideas they're the ones who have the prophetic vision and the greatest insights into the world. L'shota mahi. What is how do we know? Ki hadamar Ravashi davikai verse to kadim l'chuz. The Ravashi is one standing in the marketplace of Mechuzah. Shamil Shota, you're the insane person. The Kama Reish Mesifta, the Malach B'matim Mechuzah, Tavyumi Chasim, the one who's the Rosh Yeshiva, who's going to be ruling, being the head of Yeshiva, Matim Chasya. He signs his name Tavyumi. And Amar Man Chasim Tavyumi B'Rabbanan. So Rami Barcham, so Marbar Ravashi said, well, who signs his name as Tavyumi amongst the rabbis? Anna, it's me. Shemami no Didi Kaimali. So you see, it's my turn to be the Rosh Yeshiva. Come asa data. He got up and he come asa. He got up. The asa before he was able to get there. Imnu rabbanon usfei Rav difta beresha. The rabbis went to appoint Rav Acha of Difti as the Rosh Yeshiva. Even the Shamei the asa, but once they heard that Marbar Vashi was coming, Shadar Suga de Rabbanon they sent two rabbis to try and stop him. Ikve, he kept them with him. And then they sent two more rabbis to Marbar Vashi. Ikve, he stopped them again. Ikve Gabe, Asar. Soon he got 10 rabbis all hanging around with him, keeping the Moab Asar. Once he had a minion, Pasachu, he started to teach, Vitana Vidarash. And then he started to teach, because you can't start teaching unless you have a minion. So Kari Rav Acha Anashi. So then the other rabbi, Rav Acha Medifti, he said about himself, Kol Marian lo b'meher mativin. Whenever something bad happens, it's not going to quickly happen good. Kol mativin lo b'meher Marian lo. Something good happens, will not quickly do bad. And so we see from here that this whole idea that Marbar Vashi would be the Rosh Yeshiva, it wasn't said by the rabbis. First, it was said by this Shote in the markets of Mechuzah, and indeed it would happen that he became the Rosh Yeshiva. And then what about the fact that Tinokos, that little children, are the ones who are also prophets, now that the temple was destroyed? So the Gemara says the point of it is, Ma'iki Hadabas Rav Chisda Havayasa V'Kamfei Davua. And Rav Chisda's daughter was one sitting in the cloak of her father. Havayasvi Kamei Rava the Rami Barchama. So Rava and Rami Barchama were sitting with her. So she was sitting in front of Rava and Rami Barchama. Amarla. So he said to her, father said to her, Rav Chisda's father said to her, Man minayu bayis. Which one of these do you want to marry? Amarle, she said to him, Trevayu, both of them. And that's what happened. And Amar Rava V'ana Basra, Rava said, I'll go after. I'm going to go last because that's an indication. I want to go second because the first one is going to die or get divorced. I'd rather be the second one. So we see from here the idea. What does it mean that prophecy is given over to scholars is given over from the prophets to the children and to the fools. It means to say that this way I understand it, that now that the temple is no longer around, we don't have prophets, but we ourselves, even if we think we're a fool, even if we're a child, we are the ones who can rebuild it through our prophecy. Don't wait for the prophet. We ourselves are capable of being the prophets. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Dimi Dimin Haifa, Kodem Shiocho Adam V'Yishta. So now we have another statement from Avdimi Dimin Haifa. Before a person will eat and drink, Yesh Lo Shtei Levavos. He has two hearts. After he eats and drinks, he only has one heart. As it says, Ish Navuv Yoavev. And it says, Ksiv Navuv Luchos. And the boards are hollow. And Amar Avunim Breder Veshua, Ragel B'Yayin, and also we have a statement where Avunim Breder Veshua says, one who is regularly to drink wine, I feel Libo Autumn Kabisua Yayin Mifako. If somebody is regularly drinks wine, even if his heart is closed off, meaning he has no insight, like virgin, yayin mifako, wine will make him smarter. As it says, the tirosh that the tirosh will awaken the virgins. The wine will awaken the virgins. It's obviously the case that if you have chelak bechor v'chelak pashut, and let's say you have a division of the land and an inheritance, and a double portion goes to the firstborn, and a single portion goes to the regular person. And the double portion will allow the firstborn to get two properties that adjoin each other. You give them both on one border. You give the Bechor, so he could. This is the din in bar mitzvah. You let him have his property next to the other property. But let's say yavam mai. Let's say one would be a yavam, i.e., that he got the double portion not as a firstborn, but he married his deceased brother's wife, and that's how he's getting the double portion. So Amar Abaya, it's the same thing. My time and Bechor Kar Yerachmana, because the verse calls the one who marries his brother's widow. He calls him the Bechor Asher Tileid. That it mentions the firstborn that will be born. And so we see from here that this is a reference. So it mentions the firstborn. But not everybody accepts this, because Rava says, Rava Amar Krav, Bechor, Havayato Bechor, Vein Chalukato Bechor. Means to say its existence is like the firstborn, but the division is not like the firstborn. The existence like the firstborn in that he gets a portion of his brother, but the division is not in that he misses out on the law of the bar mitzvah of getting the neighboring property. Oh, the zaman ara mitzvah de Beinasha. There was a person who bought the land on the border of his father's household. Ki kapalgo, when it came to divide up the property, Amarle, he said to them, Pliguli, I'm sorry, give it to me on the border, because I already have that land. Rabba says, yeah, give it to him, because otherwise we force him about midaston. We force him not to act like jerks, and so give him the property that anyway helps him out. So Rav Yosef says, Amrile Achei, his brothers will say, he has a better property, like the people of Bar Marion. Meaning to say, why should he get the better property? And so, meaning to say, it's a more advantageous property. In fact, that's the law. I'm going to ask another question. Trey Arasa, Trey Nigri. Let's say you have two pieces of property, and they both have a stream in them, and so we want to know, can we force each one to get one? So Amar Rabba Kulonze Kofal Midas stone. So Rabba says we force it, meaning to say in this case, if one of them is so one of them wants you to divide up that you get a little bit of each, and the other one says, no, I want to get one entire one, and you get the other entire one. So Rava says we force them. So Amar Rava comes out from Mitzvah. So Maskafar Rav Yosef Zimin Dai Midbo Vayla Midbo. One of them is going to dry out. He wants to hedge his bets by getting some of both. In fact, the law is like Rav Yosef, that we let him hedge his bets there by saying, I don't want to divide it up. I want to get a little bit of each one. So let's say we say Tarti Achad Nigra. Let's say there's two pieces of land on one stream, and one of them bought the land next to one of them. So we want to know what's the law there. So he says, we force him to force the other brother to give this guy the part that's next to his land. But no, he could respond that that's no good for me. Why? Because I'd rather have two fields, one on this side, one on this side, and one in the middle, so that my sharecropper, so I get more sharecroppers, and my field will eventually be watched better. In that last case, the law is like Rav Yosef that we don't force them. Oh, excuse me. The law is like Rav Yosef that we force Mamidas Dom in this last case. Why? But because to say, oh, I wanted two workers, one in each space. I want to divide up land, so I have sharecroppers in each space. That's not a real claim. Then the last piece the Gemara says about this is Chad Gisa Nagra v'Chad Gisa Nahara. That there's a field of two brothers that they inherited. That there's a river on the eastern side and a little stream on the northern side. So the way you divided it up is that that you want to give them each part of the river and part of the stream. So you divide it up diagonally and going around. The Rashi has a beautiful diagram, and this way everybody's going to get an equal share. Okay, we'll stop the recording here, and I want to just say a word about our schedule. God willing.